First of all, just to say that I'm honoured to be here. I'm familiar with the Annaghdown Heritage, the work you do, and it's excellent. I use your site quite a bit, and I also appreciate the fact that so many people have turned up on a bad night, such as tonight. And it's, as I said, great to be here. I'd like to also thank a few people here. Particularly Jojo, they give me background on the gardeners, and Joe's give me a lot of background on the family. Now, I should first of all say who I am. This might explain some of it. So my dad was Michael Cunningham from Bunatober, and my mother was Greta Burke from Cloonboo. And I originally had 7 siblings. My brother Patrick died in 2017, and my sister Paula, who was Down syndrome, died in 1992. So I have 5 sisters remaining. So anyway, that's where I start. As you can see, all of my grandparents were based in Annaghdown. John Cunningham, my grandfather, who I never met, he died the day after my parents got married, in fact, was in Bunatober. Maggie Skerritt, his wife, came from Kilgill. Patrick Burke was still Cloonboo. And Nora Donnellan, his wife, was from Claddagh originally. So as I go through the talk, I'll explain a bit more about the people further on there.
What is that not working?
So this is just the same thing in a different form. It's not as visible, so I'll advance on it. I look at, first of all, my Burke relations, and the eldest of those was Bridgie. She married Daniel Madden from Ballygar, and then you had Tommy, who's Tom's father here, and his wife Rebecca. And I'd like to acknowledge Tom's wife Noreen's passing. She was there. Then we had Johnny Burke married to Bridgie Allen, who was also from Cloonboo. And Matty, a lot of people might know him, he was MJ Burke Carpets in Galway. He died quite young in 1973, married to Annaghdown. Michael Burke was a teacher in Sligo. Hopefully you can see that. In Eastkey, and married Margaret Rowan from, I think it was Milltown. And we then had Noni, who emigrated to Canada, married Jack Corrigan, and lived in Montreal. There were also 2 sons who died at a young age later, which was, I suppose, common enough in those times. So that's a brief look at my aunts and uncles on the Cunningham side, or on the Burke side, sorry. On the Cunningham side, then the eldest was Delia, who was in Bunatober, married to Mick Conway. Then you had Willie Cunningham, who lived in Bigra, married to Mary Heenan, who was from Knockdoe, and Willie's son would be John F., the historian. And you then have Martin, who was in the home place in Bunatober. Martin Joe is his son there. Married to Noni Milan, who would have been a niece of Martin Milan that was executed in 1922. And Nora was a nurse and married Tolly Neville. They lived in Ballinasloe. Sarah and Margie and Mary are here tonight. Her daughters married Michael Joe Monaghan, who was, his mother was one of the Burke Cluj, wasn't it? The Burkes from Cluj, yeah. And then you had May, who's still alive, was 100 last May, the 2nd of May last. married to Matty Graney from Kilthrog, who would be the politician Noel Graney, the minister at the moment, would have been a nephew of his. Yeah. So we have a small bit of power as well. Again, that's the immediate aunts and uncles on my dad's side. Moving on to the next generation back, and this is the Skerritts, who were originally from Kilgill, and so Maggie was my paternal grandmother, and lived to a great age. I think she was 92 when she died. But her two older sisters, Mary Ellen and Delia, both immigrated initially to Indianapolis in the States, though Delia actually moved to Holyoke in Massachusetts and married Patrick Ward from Carolyn when she was out there. There was then Michael Skerritt married Mary Healy from Auclaggeen, and John Skerritt, and he then had Kate married John Goley from Annaghdown, and Nora Skerritt married John Ward from Carroll, a brother of Patrick Ward here. So you had two sisters marrying two brothers. And finally you had Martin Skerritt, Matty Skerritt, he was single, and Aggie Skerritt then was the youngest, married Patrick Long from Kinishka. So that's the Skerritt side, my paternal grandmother, as I said. Yeah, John Skerritt here actually, if you see the date, 1918, he died of the Spanish flu, and I think my granny was actually minding him at the time. So moving. There's Kilgill. Martin was Kilgill, but I think they originally, I'll get back to that on the next generation back. Yeah, okay. So then looking at the Cunninghams, you had the eldest was Mary Cunningham, married to Martin Graney from Moss Riva, I think. And Dad had a cousin, but we didn't know the exact relation. John Graney, he lived in Sherwood Avenue in Galway. We used to visit, shouldn't say bad things, but the house was a bit musty. His wife was older than he was, but we never rightly knew what the connection was, and he was actually Dad's first cousin. Then you had Andrew, who moved to Headford, married Mary Ann Burke. I think she was from Ballybeg, and Margie McNamara would be of that line, if anybody knows. And there's also some Cunninghams there that I went to college with. William Cunningham married Kathleen Burke, and he was in Kilgill. Sarah was also in Kilgill, married to Patrick Flaherty. And you had Michael Cunningham married to Katie Newell, and they were in Tuam, and Michael had sons Ray and Hubert, who were teachers, and he also had daughters Dilly, who was also a teacher, and May, who was a hairdresser in Galway. And the youngest, then Patrick, is said to have moved to Dublin, but I have a suspicion he may have actually gone to Sheffield and married there, but I'm not totally certain. So, and Dennis also went to Tuam, married Mary Walsh, and one of his daughters was Hilda Reynolds. People will be familiar with the Reynolds in Shoon. Just have to make sure I've included everybody there. Right, so that's on my dad's side. We switched to my mom, and Thomas Burke married Bridget Fahey from Castle Quarter, and he moved to Galway, and his son Patrick was a teacher. He moved to Claddagh in Mike Cullen, and he had 6 daughters. So one of those, I remember names, Gay, Mary, and Madeline, I think, but again, I haven't seen them in years. Then you had Mary Burke Allen, who was a very responsible woman in the sense that she looked after, she seems to have signed the death certificates for her grandmother and so on. She married Patrick Allen, and they had 2 sons, Patrick and John, and a daughter, Mary. But that John Allen, the son of Patrick Allen, would have been, he married Angela Bailey, so that's the Bailey Allen Hall. And, you know, he was one of these characters when we were growing up. He was kind of revered by the family, but I didn't even know he was a first cousin. But that's the Allens again. I think Patrick Allen was from Castle Quarter. You then had Bridgie Burke, she died fairly young, and then Ellen Burke married Dermot, or Darby Burke, who was also from Cloonboo. His father was John Burke. Sorry. So again, that seems to be a kind of trait in the family. The Burkes don't seem to have as many as the Cunninghams. I'm not sure why. So let's see. Yeah, that's most of that. Yeah, just to say about Ellen and Darby, that people would know some of that family. There was Peter and Alice and Sarah, and there was also Bridget Gallagher. And I occasionally meet Bridget's son Joe. He does a bit of singing, and I meet him occasionally in Galway. He's based in Dublin. And some of those emigrated to the States. There's a cousin, Peter's son Frank, is in Chicago, I think. I went to school with him, and he was a great mate of Tony Smalls, Rena's brother, Tony. So I haven't seen him for years. Okay, so that's my granddad on my mom's side. And I switched then to the Donnellans. Actually, there's quite a few of them, as you can see. My granny, Nora, was the eldest, and she lived with us for a while. In fact, she died in our house in 1961. Around the time of Storm Debbie. Her sister Margaret married Michael Commons from Kanishka, and they moved to Ballybay, and their son Joe moved to Newry, and we still have cousins up there. And Geraldine, who's here, is one of Joe's brother, Michael, wasn't it? Yeah, would have been Geraldine's father. Then, interestingly, the next 2, Timothy and John, both immigrated to the States. But I haven't been able to find anything about John. Just seems to have disappeared. Timothy died in 1936, and there was a notice in one of the American papers, you know, listing his family as here. But he I don't know if many people are aware of it, but he married, except she's down as Jane A, and I don't know if the A is a second name or whether it's a surname. She was originally from Sligo, but I haven't been able to find anything else. But that's Tim. Then Patrick was in the home place in Annaghdown, married Mary Ellen Costello, which Sharon Upton there put me right on at one stage. Mary married Stephen Hines in Castlegar. At one stage, she stayed with us as well. My mum used to take in, even though the rate was in family, in a council house, used to take in relations, one at a time, usually. Then, of course, you have Winnie, who married Jim Fay, and Winnie would be May Delaney's mother. So it's great that May is still alive, was 90 recently, and so on. And she had a brother, Johnny, who died some years ago. Then recently, Bridget was known as Delia Donnellan, married Timothy Lane, who was from Brosna in Kerry, I think, originally. But I met some of her grandchildren at the Month's Mind for Noreen in Cloonboo. And it was great to meet them. There was Hilda and Bernie and Michael, and I think Nuala was there as well, though I didn't actually meet Nuala in person. And strangely, Hilda's daughter married Paul Graney's cousin, David, who's connected to me on the Skerritt side, as Paul is. So even though she was up in Mullinalocht in Longford, they managed to meet. So I actually accidentally discovered this on Ancestry, and we made a connection and recently met some of the family. So that's, oh yeah, that's not all. There were two brothers who were at home with Pat Donnellan first, Mick and Joe, and Joe stayed with us as well for a while, and had a propensity for the drink, a small bit. Anyway, I think maybe back in those days, you got a hard time if you were a regular drinker, whereas, but he like he did, anyway. He stayed with us for a few years and was a handyman in different ways. So that's the Donnellan side. I just go back to the Cunninghams from here. What am I doing on time? Oh, that's not too bad, yeah. So again, this is Grandad John Cunningham, the Shanachie. He's mentioned in Sean Agronia's book, because Sean Agronia's grandfather and he used to exchange stories in Bunatober. And Maggie Skerritt, but I'm just focusing on my paternal grandfather at the moment. His parents were Michael Cunningham, who was in Bunatober, and Bridget Ford, who was from Lishy-Navalla originally. And if you go back there, you'll see his father was Liam Cunningham, but Mike, he was called Mike, and Mike's mother was another gardener, Maria, I think she was known as Milesha Gardner, and she might have been a grandaunt of Honor Gardner, who was the great grandmother. And then the Bidford from Lishy-Navalla, her father was Andrew, mother was Sarah Finn, and we still find there are Finn connections there. Anyway, I'll come back to some of that again. That's just a quick look at going back a little bit. So this is Mike Cunningham, who is the great grandfather, and the eldest there was William Cunningham, who was married initially to he was married twice. His first wife died, and so he was married to Mary Burke, who died in 1874, and remarried to Honor Fay, and had a shop and pub in Gorse Road back then. You then had Mary, who married Mark Devaney, who was in the military, I think. Bridget, as far as I know, didn't get married. And Ellen married a Michael Kine from towards Headford, I think. The son Pat, and some people might recall this from the newspaper, he drowned in a lake accidentally. And I think it was Carmorris. And then the last one here, John Cunningham, is quite interesting. He was an undertaker and a shopkeeper in Tuam. And his wife, Sarah Murphy, was the confectioner. She was from Cong. So again, you find some of these relations cropping up in the UK and so on. So that's Mike Cunningham. His wife was one of two Bidford's great grandmother. There was a Bidford on my mom's side as well. And I don't know an awful lot about Bidford, except she was from Lishy and Dennis Ford was a brother. He was known as Denny. I think my grandfather, John Cunningham, used to go back to Lishy because he had Irish in Lishy, and the grandfather was into the stories and so on. So, and there were two brothers, John and Michael. Maybe more. I'm not totally sure. So the connection here is interesting. Bidford from Lishy because that links in the Hurneys, Michael John Hurney and so on, who were third cousins of ours. I had an experience where I discovered that the Hurneys were third cousins. I was out in Basel visiting my sister Marion, who's on Zoom at the moment. But I follow Liverpool in soccer, or still am, but I went to this Irish pub and watching the match, and I was sitting beside at the counter beside this man, and at halftime we started chatting, and he turned out to be Frank Hurney, one of the Hurneys. So third cousin right beside me. I mean, what are the odds on that? Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Thank you. So there are some other connections there as well. Like the Murphy's Pub in Galway, the late Paddy Murphy was a third cousin of ours. And his daughter, Mary, was my wife's bridesmaid, one of two. The other bridesmaid was related as well. But anyway, not that it's doing me much good, but anyway, sorry. So, and also the Finns of Athenry are connected, and David Graney, Paul's cousin, is connected in both ways. He's connected with them. I think his mother was Feeney, and also via Honor Skerritt, who was a sister of my two times great-grandfather. I'll come to that in a minute. Is that okay? Are you lost or? Okay, so I'll move on there to Maggie Skerritt's side, still on my dad's side. So again, her father was Martin Skerritt from Kilgill, and her mother was Honor Gardner, who would be on Jojo's side of the family. And as you saw earlier, there was an earlier Gardner connection as well. And again, if you look further back, Honor Gardner's father, John Gardner, and the mother was Mary Kavanagh, so it links us into a lot of the Kavanaghs are still crop as cousins, yeah. So Martin Skerritt was my great-grandfather, and Honor was the great-grandmother. And here you have his father, Michael Skerritt, married Mary Cunningham from Kilgill. And I think he came, as we were discussing earlier, from Claddagh. And so that's how the Skerritts arrived in Kilgale. Um, so I move on to look at Martin Skerritt and his siblings, maybe first of all. And here I didn't know till I started on this that we had lots of cousins in Portland, Maine, who have moved around the States since. And so Michael and Thomas and William all migrated to Portland. So did Mary, who married Martin Graney before she left. And Martin Graney was her first cousin once removed, I think. So they had to get a dispensation, I presume. So that's the Skerritt and Martin Skerritt siblings. And there's still, I think you've been in touch here at the Annaghdown Earth Society with some of those connections. The sisters were, well, Bridget, she was known as Dolly, sorry, known as Delia. She was Delia Dolly, married to, he was a blacksmith. And Kate married, she was Kate Kilkelly from Drumgriffin. That Kilkelly name seems to have changed to Kelly along the way. Patrick lived in Kilgill, and his son Martin was in the Annaghdown IRA in the ill-fated Kilroe ambush. And I'm not sure, I think he might have been on the run even during the Civil War. And he died at a young age in 1936. That's so that's Patrick's son. John married O'Neill, I forget her first name, in Carrigawn. And as I said, Mary married a cousin from Argane, and so did William here, who both of whom moved to Portland. So I've been told Portland is a lovely place to go to, so I'll have to put it on my bucket list or whatever. Okay, that's still on my father's side. And here's the fourth great-grandparent, who's Honor Gardner, and Jojo probably knows more about this than I do in lots of ways. He spread me quite a bit of information. But I did discover a few things. So the William or Billy was the eldest, I think, and he had a grain business in Forster Street. His son Tommy was in the British Army and had a house in Frenchville, and we used to have a man coming to put in the telly when we were kids, Pascal Gardner. Little did we know he was Dad's second cousin, you know. So again, all of these things, like Pascal died only in the last year or two, and lived in Frenchville near us in the Claddagh. So that's then you had Ellen and John, both of whom also went to Invercargill in New Zealand. You'll see there are lots of connections in Invercargill. There were Mylands, I think, went there as well. And so that's in the 1880s, they went there. Thomas also migrated, but this time to Indianapolis. Again, there were connections in Indianapolis, I mentioned already. Bridget married Martin Ford of Anna West, I think it was, but she died shortly afterwards, and so he remarried, and I can't remember the name now exactly. Mary married Martin Dooley of Cloonboo, and again, this is where I'm at a disadvantage. Some of these townlands, I don't even know exactly where they are. But were they? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, and then there was Margaret married James Lally of Woodkey. but they didn't have any kids, I think. Yeah, yeah. And Michael finally there, not finally actually, married Mary Goley, and that's your line, Giorgio, I think, isn't it? Yeah. And finally, Bartholomew emigrated to the US. I don't know much more about him at the moment. Yeah, so that's all of my dad's side, the great grandparents. So um, I'll switch back to switch over to my mom's. And I, I seem to know, well, I know less about my mom's side than my dad's. So there's this is, I put down Mary Burke here, but that's tentative. Um, she married Thomas Hart from Claddagh near Headford. But I think even though I were down as the daughter of Thomas Burke, she may have been the daughter of a John Burke, who's the connection to Paul Burke in New Zealand, yeah, that you met. So, but again, there are DNA connections there through that link. Francis Lyle, who died 3 years ago, was one of those. Then Patrick's brother, Patrick Burke's brother Thomas, I think may have married another Mary Burke, but I don't know. Honor didn't marry, and Julia married Patrick Small, and of Park. She married him in 1876. 17 days after my great granddad Patrick Burke married another Bidford. She was from Berana. In fact, the granddaughter, the granddaughter of Julia married Michael Regan of the pub in Cloonboo there. So, there may have been more in the family, but I don't know. And a lot of the mystery here is because Thomas Burke married, it seems to be definitely Mary Burke, but I know my mom thought it was a Mary Kavanagh, and so other people did as well. And I don't know exactly, where where she came from. But though there are some instant links cropping up in that regard. Now I move over to the other Bidford. That's and this is very instant again in terms of migration, because she married my great granddad Patrick Burke Cloonboo, but she was from Berana, as I mentioned. She had a sister, Mary Ford, that married a Michael Farraher, and Michael had a son, John. They changed the name to Farrington. I'm not sure why. Who went to New Zealand and got married 3 times out there. To 2 sisters first, and then it seems he might have got married during the war as well to somebody in Austria. And then you had John Ford. He was known as John Casey Ford. He went to New Zealand as well, married Nora Milan, who may be connected to, yeah. And then we had Thomas, that was also called Casey Ford, married another Celia Ford from Annaghdown. And he had a big family, 7 or 8 or 9, and I've been in contact with some of those, well, by email and so on. A lot of them are in Invercargill. The Ellises, Margaret, Mary Ellis would be a 3rd cousin still. So I'm blocking things there, sorry. So that's the Casey Fords. So all both John and Thomas Casey Ford, they were called Casey Fords because their mother was Casey from Berana as well. All migrated to New Zealand, as did Michael Farrer and Mary Ford's son, John Farrington. So again, there are lots of cousins there. And again, they're cousins, which come to who are on the Kavanagh side. In fact, there's a bit of unusual history there. And so I moved back to the Donnellans. That's my maternal grandmother's people. I don't have a lot of information here. He married Margaret O'Brien from Corbally in Curdendrum. But it was also always kind of said in the family that John Donnellan's mother was Margaret Blake. But just looking at a few things, and if you look at the censuses, you'll find that Margaret Blake was married to Michael Donnellan, who was born about 1840. And so, you know, it looks like Michael Donnellan was a brother rather than the father of John Donnellan. So Margaret Blake would seem to have been John Donnellan's sister-in-law. But again, it's one of these things that can be resolved. The reason they're so hard to locate is that the Donnellans were originally herds. So they don't appear, for instance, in the Griffiths valuation of 1850 and so on. So Michael lived in Argane, sometimes Auclegeen. John lived in Auclegeen. And so I haven't been able to go any further back, except that kind of DNA links link us to a Kerman estate near Barneyjarrig, this place called Hillsbrook, and we have a lot of connections there, and so they're only about third, fourth cousin, whatever, maybe even less, because you know the DNA thing can be, you can stretch it quite a bit, but anyway, there's for instance Jack Fay and quite a number of Fays from around Hillsbrook and Barneyjarrig that which would suggest maybe that John Donnellan's mother was possibly Fay, but again, that's just speculation. But it's where, you know, the DNA connections are interesting, that it wouldn't have appeared too easily in other ways. So as I said, I think there were herds, and as probably some of you would know, herds, it doesn't sound like much, but they were the equivalent of vets back in those days, because they were the only ones that had the skill with the animals, and they had a whole set of surgical tools for doing things. And so as well as that, they were in Argane, Auclegeen, and Argane was also a Kerman estate, so it looks like they might have moved from a Kerman estate in Hillsbrook near Barneyjarrig to one over here. So the Fays that I'm linking to back there are in a place called Oman Beg, but again, it's pretty close to Hillsbrook there, which was a Kerman estate. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The last great grandparent then is Margaret O'Brien from Corbally, and she had a lot more siblings. I thought there was only 3 or 4 of us, but as you can see there, there's quite a few. William Winifred, who lived in Curdendrum, and there was Michael, who got married quite late. He would have been 35 and 23. What's that? 58 when he married Ellen Walsh, whose family were also herds. So there was also this, herds seem to intermarry with herds. I'm not, yeah, but and you had Mary O'Brien. There was an interesting story there that, well, sad, that Winnie, who was in the home place, was assaulted and died sometime later in 1922. And that Michael O'Brien, who married late, died, in fact, sorry, I put on 23, he wasn't that old, but he married late, in 1915, I think he married but he died in 1923. So did Margaret O'Brien, my great grandmother, and there was a dispute over land, and in particular, Ellen Walsh, who had married Michael O'Brien, was trying to stay on the land, and the executors of, I think it was when it's documented in papers and that, were John Donnellan, whose wife had died, and Martin O'Brien, who seems to have been a cousin of those O'Brien, and the court case was about to come up, and Martin O'Brien's wife was murdered, and beyond that now I don't know, but again, land disputes arise here as well. So yeah, so that's the last great grandmother, Margaret O'Brien. Interestingly, her mother was Honor Moore, and her mother again was Eleanor Hartnett, which is a quite unusual name for Annaghdown, Corndalla, or whatever. But yeah, I'll come back to that in a minute. Right, so I'm nearly there. Am I okay on? Yeah. Okay, don't ask too many hard questions. So, okay, now this is just the Cunningham roots. So our great-great-grandparents, Liam Cunningham, Mary, Milesha Gardner, were both born about 1797. And Milesha may have been a grand-aunt of Honor Gardner Skerritt, I'm not totally sure. Liam's father was Pádraig Moore Cunningham, who moved to Bunatober from Manus Flynn shortly after Francis Kerwin, who was a white boy that used to hawk cattle and so on, was executed in June 1799. There's kind of documentation on that. There was quite a lot of people, in court over that, but he was the only one that was executed. But again, I was discussing this with Jerry Morgan the other day, and Pat's family were from Boherkill, Golden Park, wasn't it? Yeah, and they're also connected. Now, this Pádraig Moore, I think, was maybe born in 1826, whereas there's a Patrick on your side that's 1836. So, but in any case, that links us back to Manus Flynn, which is where Matt Cunningham, the musician's family, came from, the Kevills and so on. And just from DNA, again, I'm speculating here, there seems to be relations to the Cunninghams of Kilgill and Sleafin going further back. And on migration, Pádraig had a son, Michael. It was my cousin John that put me onto this first. That his sons, William and Martin, emigrated to the States. There was actually an ad in the Boston Pilot trying to locate them, but I don't know. But again, he may have had a son or grandson, Thomas, called Tan Cunningham, because I've come up on this on Ancestry from Louisville, Kentucky, and there's DNA connections with 5 or 6 people, so it looks like at some stage one of that generation back then migrated and ended up in Kentucky. So that's just the Cunninghams going back to Manus Flynn. The Skerritts. So our great-great-grandfather was Michael Skerritt, originally from Claddagh. His wife was Mary Cunningham, who was a Cunningham from Kilgill, and they had 12 children in Kilgill. I think I showed that earlier. There was 3 sons and a daughter who went to Portland and so on. But Michael had an older brother, Martin. Like Michael was born in 1818. Martin seems to have been born about 1798, which is, a 20-year gap, married to an Ellen Hessian. And a lot of people seem to, well, I mean, it's debatable, think that Martin might have been the father, but he wouldn't seem to be. And Galway historian Padre O'Dowd is from that line as well, that's Martin Skerritt's line. married to Alan Hessian. And in fact, I was mentioning my wife's bridesmaid, the other one was Teresa Ryan, whose mother was Nellie Hanley, who was on that Skerritt line also, so she's a fourth cousin thereabouts. So Michael's sister Honor is the connection with Paul here and with David Graney. Married William Burke of Arganing, and her granddaughter Honor Burke was, and I only discovered that a few years ago, was Martin Milan's mother, so there's a double connection, we'll say, particularly with the Cunninghams and Bunatober, because their mom was a niece, and there was this connection as well through the Skerritts in Arganing, well, he was Burke in Arganing. Again, kind of DNA has thrown up instant connections with Michael Skerritt, that in Ohio and the USA, there's quite a number of connections there, and in Whitwick and Leicester, which was a coal mining town, there seems to have been a tradition at some stage, I don't know, was it organized by the landlord or not, that people in Annaghdown went over to Durham or the coal fields and so on, and some of them stayed there, some of them went from there to the States, and that would seem to be the case with these people. Again, I've more information than that on that. So that's some of what I know about the Skerritts. So I think this was the final slide. Just looking at the Kavanaghs. So our great grandmother, Honor Gardner's mother, was Mary Ann Ruth Kavanagh. Mary Kavanagh, born in 1830, was the daughter of William Kavanagh and Honor Annie Burke, and she seems to be Burke from Arganing, which possibly a direct relation of William Burke that I mentioned earlier. William Kavanagh's siblings, and he was at Lyme Park House in Annaghdown, included Margaret, who married Padre O'Grady, one of the Grannies in Bunatober, and Sabina married James Goley, so there's an earlier Goley connection there. Francis, a brother. Now, there's some debate about that, I think, that's whether he was a brother or not, but because he's important for reasons, I don't know if I mentioned them there. Oh yeah, because Francis's son, William, started the migrant chain to Invercargill. He was in Melbourne, and the South Island of New Zealand was meant to be the Scottish Presbyterian enclave or whatever, but they ran out of workers and they ran out of women, so they decided to let people in from Australia. And William Kavanagh was one of the first ones to go across, son of Francis, and he brought quite a few others over, John Francis Kavanagh, Annie, Mary, Margaret, and so on, and again, a whole lot more. And that's one of the reasons why there are so many Annaghdown people in around Invercargill and Otago. And interestingly, William Kavanagh, I think it was 1858, I'm not totally sure now, that he went to Invercargill, and there was a gold rush in the early 1860s in Otago, and a lot of them made money, and it may have been by that avenue that he was able to set up this migrant chain. And incidentally, there's a song that I sing, Farewell to the Gold, which was by, about that actually incident, and I didn't realize till later that this was the Kavanaghs, so yeah, the last thing is in that Honor Annie Burke may have been the sister, this is speculation, of William Burke, who married my great-great-granddad Honor Skerritt, which is Paul and David Graney's connection. She had a sister, Julia Boyle, and I'm just making this to link to my mom's first cousin. She was a great-grandmother of Martin Kavanagh, who married Nora Delaney, the sister of Paddy Delaney, May's husband, late husband. So, but I think, yeah, maybe I have one last slide, which is just kind of where this kind of DNA chasing, because I haven't really looked very deeply at church records and so on. I have a lot of connections to the Burkes of Coolock or Coola, which is near Menlo, Castlegar, near town, and discovered I had connection to Rose Burke-Wald and her daughter, Emer Conroy. They were from Newcastle and Galway, a fifth cousin later, and also they're on the same link as Freddie Grealish of the UK, and Grealish is in Wood Key, Antoinette, and her cousin, Sister Gabriel. Well, I don't have a kind of DNA link to Sister Gabriel, to be honest. It's to her brother, Gabriel. She was more Grealish. But again, they link back to Noel Grealish as well, though that's a separate connection. I think it might come from the Lishi-Navala connection, really. So as I say here, a comment right here was that there was a Bridget Burke married to Patrick Killelea of Grange, and she was an ancestor of these people here. There's quite a lot. There's maybe 20 of them in different parts of the world now, that link sometimes weakly enough. So I just wonder, was she related to twice great grandparents, Thomas and Mary Burke? Could have been related sister of Thomas Burke, or related to his wife Mary Burke, who was born about 1820, Bridget 1830. But again, that's speculation. But I just say at the end that one of those Burkes married William Grealish, and that's how the Grealishes come into it. But there are other connections. But again, with a word of caution, if you like, that's where genealogy leads you to. And with Annaghdown, almost everybody is maybe slightly related, so yeah, it's called endogeny or whatever. So you need to be careful about jumping to conclusions. You don't know, as I say, in the Claddagh where I'm from, you just, because people have been there for, their ancestors for a few hundred years, and you don't know who you're talking to, so just be very careful. So that's it, really.